Okay, so we are live again because I forgot to put the live stream. It was unlisted the first time I went live. So now everyone should be able to join. So I'm just going to recap what I already said. And if you can hear me, just say hi in the chat and we can get going. Okay. Hopefully everything is working fine right now. All right, so in the last live stream we modeled the clothing and we also sculpted in the folds on the clothes, and in my spare time I went ahead and groomed the hair. The hair still has a lot of work to do, but I'm going to do that one later, and because this is going to take a lot of time for me to do manually, so I'll see if there's a way I can use geometry nodes to do it, or if I just still have to do it manually. But other than that, I'm going to do the texturing on the character today. So I'm just going to close this and let's go in the character. We need UV maps before we can actually start texturing. So I'm just going to, okay, before I actually start marking the UVs, I'm going to model the eye cavity and the mouth bag. So let's just do that right away. I'm going to isolate the character, and then I'm going to extrude this on the y-axis. Make sure snapping is turned off, and I'll just move this back. And from the front view also, G and X to move it to the side a bit, and I'll scale this down something like this. And if you guys can hear me, just say hi in the chat. Okay, and okay, I'm going to use Alt B, and I'm going to max the viewport selection or the viewport visibility, and then I'm just going to bring this here. E and S, I'll scale this out, and Alt S, I'll just bring this out a little bit. And I'm also going to add in another loop dot right here. So I've already rigged this mesh before, that's why it's bringing up that error. So no need to worry about that. I'm going to solve that one later on. For now, let me just model this out. Alt S. Okay, and then I'm going to select this loop, right click, loop tools, and then I'm going to relax here. I'm also going to relax this one and this one, and I'm gonna add one loop dot right here. Okay, and let me also adjust this one a bit, and I'll turn on the subdivision, see how that's looking. Okay, I think I need to go into sculpt mode a bit and refine the shape of this part of the eye just a little bit. I'm just going to use the grab brush, and then I'm going to pull this out. Okay, and SZ, I'm going to scale this up, and I'm going to rotate it. Okay, something like this. And now to mirror this over to the other side, you can just use the symmetrize function in sculpt mode, and then I'm going to symmetrize this. Okay, and that has been mirrored over. Hello Jmund at hello, how you doing? Finally you made it to the stream. Okay, so yeah, what's next? On the character, I'm also going to hide, I'm going to disable the subdivision, and I'm going to extrude for the mouth bag. I'll do the same thing I did for the eyes. I'm just going to use the Alt B, that's the shortcut, and I'm just going to max this part of the character out, and I'm going to E and extrude this on the y-axis, something like this. And then I'm going to bring this, I'll enable X symmetry in edit mode. I'll bring this up and I'll select these ones, bring them up. Also here, bring this up. Now I'm just trying to round out the shape, make it like an oval shape. So I'm currently modeling the mount bag. So I'll just bring this up like so. Okay. And then I'm also going to bring this one like this. I'll bring this up. Then I'll select this row and bring that down. Okay, so this is going to be the basis of the mount bag. And I'm going to add a loop cut right here. And Alt S, I'm going to scale this down. I'll scale this also on the Y axis and I'll bring it forward. I'll also use the relax command on it. Okay. So something like this. Then I can also add in another loop cut here. And I'll just press Alt S so that those two loop cuts overlap on each other. So something like this. And then I'm going to select this one, SY, I'll scale it a bit on the Y axis, and E and Y, I'm going to extrude this out, and then I'll scale it up on the Z axis. Let me also turn on screencast keys so that you guys can see what I'm pressing. Okay, and SY, I'm going to scale this on the X axis, and then I'm going to relax these. And I'll just press Shift R a couple of times to repeat the relax option, the relax command. And I'll scale this up. I will also scale this up, scale it on the Z axis, and then I'll relax that one a bit. Okay, and then we can extrude this all the way to the back. We can add in an extra loop cut here and Alt S. I'm going to scale this up. I'll also add in another one here and Alt S to scale this up. Add in another one here, Alt S to scale this up, Alt S to scale this up. Okay, and it's a bit too wide from the front view, so I'm just going to select these loops, SX, and I'm going to scale this in a little bit, and I'm also going to scale this on the Y axis so that it doesn't, on the X axis so that it doesn't come out from the side of the mount. S and X, and yeah, I'm going to scale that like that, SX. Okay, someone is asking, what are your computer specs? I'm currently using a laptop for this live stream, and it's the MSI Katana. The specs, if I can remember correctly, the graphics card is an NVIDIA RTX 3050, and I believe 16 gigs of RAM, and yeah, those are the specs I can remember. I don't really keep the specs of my PC in my head, but yeah, MSI Katana, you can search it up and you find the specs of that laptop. Okay, so this is what we have right now, and I'm going to extrude this out, scale it down, extrude this out again and scale it down. I might need to clear the viewport max so that I can see what I'm doing at the back, so I'll just clear that with Alt B. Then I'm going to do it again. I'll make the selection bigger this time. Okay, and then I'm going to relax this, and I'm also going to relax this loop here, and the colors from the lips have also been transferred to the mount bag. So I'm just going to select these loops. I'll go into vertex paints, and I'll just paint these ones in with the normal skin color. Okay, so something like this, and I want this to be more round, so I'll probably just select this loop right click and circle S to scale this up. I'll also do the same here, circle, also the same here, circle, circle, and circle. And then I'm going to scale this on the X axis a bit, and I'll also scale this one down and also run the same command, the circle command. Okay, and this is going to be nice. This character I'm actually not going to animate or do anything with the inside of the mouth, but I'm just creating it just in case I need it for another project later on in the future. So but for this particular project that I'm working on, the inside of the mouth won't be seen. I'm just going to model it in case I need this character for another project down the line. Okay, so something like this. Oh, someone is asking, would this live stream be available after? Yes, the live stream is going to be available after. All the live streams that I've done so far are available on my YouTube channel, so you can check all of them out at any point in time. This one too is going to be available. Okay, and I'm then going to fill in these parts of the mouth. So something like this, and we need to also fill it in like this. So I believe I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loop dots here, and then I'm just going to fill this out, and then I'm holding down F, and then I'm filling this out. Okay, then I'm just going to add in a couple of loop dots here and another one here. I'll select these and Control plus. I just select all the way to somewhere close to the lips and right click, and then I'm going to smooth out these vertices, and I'll just do that a couple of times. And let me see how the shape looks from the side view. Okay, something like this could completely work just fine. For the mouse bag, I'll also take a look at it from the front, and yes, it's going to work just fine. Okay, and if I ever need to adjust it, I'm going to come in and adjust it later on. Okay, and what else do I need to do? I'm going to turn on the subdivision, and so usually there's like opening in the mouth, so you can see it a bit. So the way I like to, after you modeling the mouth back, there's a bit of an opening. So the way I like to fix that, I'm just going to use the inflate brush, and then I'm just going to inflate those vertices on each other so that it closes up that gap, like so. Okay, and now I can actually start adding in UV. So I start marking the seams so that we can start working on the texturing. So I'm going to start with the neck, Control E and mark seam. I'll select here too, Control E, mark seam. I'll turn off subdivision for now. And at the back of the character, just behind the character, Control E, I also mark another seam right there. And I'll just take this one all the way up to the hair. So where the hair scalp, where the hairline is, I'll stop it there, and I'm just going to select these, Control E and mark seam. And then I'm going to separate the ear. So I've made a video about UV unwrapping. If you don't understand what I'm doing, so you can check out that video. It's on my YouTube channel. So I'm just going to, and the exact same things I'm doing here, I show you and explain why I'm doing it in that video, so you can check it out. Okay, I'm going to mark in a seam here, and I'm going to mark also another seam that's going to separate the back of the ear from the front of the ear. Control E, mark seam, so something like that. And then we can also select these same edges that we marked here, and I'm going to mirror them over to the other side. So I'm just going to select this, and with the shortcut Ctrl Shift M, I'm going to mirror them over to the other side so that I don't have to select them here too. We'll Ctrl E, mark seam, okay, and let's also mark a seam for the inside of the mouth. I'm just going to use the shortcut Alt B once again, and I'm going to be able to see the inside of the mouth bag. So I'm going to select this loop. I don't want this one selected, so I'm just going to deselect this. I have to deselect this, and I also deselect this one and these ones too. And then Ctrl E, I'm going to mark seam right there, and I'm also going to mark another seam right here on that loop here. Ctrl E, Ctrl E, mark seam, and this should be all the loops that we need for, all the seams that we need for the face of the character. Then I'm going to go down to the legs. I'm going to mark seams here, okay, something like this. Ctrl E, mark seam. I also go down here, Ctrl E and mark seam, and then I'm going to select these seams. I'll select these ones, and then Ctrl E. I'm going to mirror this selection over to the other side. Ctrl Shift M to mirror them over to the other side, and then Ctrl E. I'm going to mark seams. Okay, and now I'm going to find an intersection or just the middle of the leg. So I'm going to hide the seam behind the leg. So this one should work fine. I'm just holding down Control to select the seam, and then I'm also going to select these ones, Ctrl E, mark seam, and then I'm going to mirror this over with Ctrl Shift M, and then Ctrl E. I'm also going to mark seams. Okay, so that's for the leg. For the feet, it should be really easy if you have good topology. So you should just be able to select a loop cut that goes around the feet, something like that, and Ctrl E. I'm going to mark seam there, and then I'm going to mark one right here, Ctrl E and mark seam, something like that. And then we don't need to separate the toes individually, and I'm going to move onto the arms. I'm going to mark the seam here actually. Ctrl E and mark seam, and also Ctrl E and mark seam. Ctrl E, mark seam. Okay, Jimund is asking, do you plan to do the skin shader in this stream? Yes, I'm going to start texturing the character, and then I'll see how far I can go with the procedural shading of the skin. But I'm going to start off with the texturing, yes, in this stream. And I'm going to go back to marking the seams, and I'm just going to select this one right here, Ctrl E, mark seam, and I'm just going to select these seams, not these ones, and then Ctrl E. I'm going to mirror this over to the other side. Ctrl Shift M is the shortcut. I believe it's also up here. Select, and then you can select mirror, and then Ctrl E, mark seam. That only works if your mesh is symmetrical, by the way. And then I'm also going to Shift G to bring up the select similar. I'm going to select seams again, but I don't want to select these ones. And then yeah, you can select those ones. Control Shift M to mirror them over to the other side, and then Control E, mark seam. Okay, so that is for the legs. Then the torso, I'm going to mark a seam down the middle here. Control E, mark seam. I'm also going to mark another one right here. Okay, I'm just going to mirror this over. Control E, mark seam, and then we can mark a seam that goes straight into the arm. So this one, okay, this one. Okay, so I'm going to let's see how I'm going to do this. I'm going to select this one, and it's currently going to the back of character. I want it to come down here, so I'm just going to select from here to here, and I'm going to select. Now this part might need to be messy a bit. Let me see. Okay, so I'm going to deselect these ones. Also going to deselect these ones all the way to here, and then I'm just going to select this loop like this. Yeah, that will work. And then Control E, I'm going to mark seam. Then I'm going to mirror this selection over to the other side. Control Shift M, and then Control E, mark seam. Okay, so for most parts of the character, I believe we are done. I'm going to use I'm also going to mark a seam here. Control E, mark seam. I'm going to mirror this over to the other side. Control E, and then I'm also going to mark seams. And I believe we have marked seams for every other part of the character. So it remains the hands now. And there's this shortcut I just found out about today. I was watching a tutorial, and the shortcut is if you press Shift B, you can like select where you want to zoom into, and it's going to zoom into that place. So I used to use the shortcut before, but I completely forgot about it, and I can just press Shift B, and then I'm going to, yes, it's just going to zoom into that place you selected. Okay, someone is asking, can I watch this stream? Yes, you can rewatch this stream later on after the stream. It's going to be available. It's going to be up on my YouTube channel after this live stream. Okay, and then I'm going to mark out, I'm going to separate the fingers. Just going to mark seams for the fingers right here, and I'm also going to make sure to select these ones at the bottom. Control E, and then mark seam, and then should be able to, yes, be able to select a loop that goes through the whole fingers, through the middle of the whole fingers. So that's nice. I'm going to deselect all of these. And let's see. Okay, so I like the way that seam goes through the whole palm. I'm going to select this side. Control E, mark seam. Then we can also separate the thumb right here. Control E and mark seam. Okay, and I believe that's all for the seams. So let me open up the UV editor, and then we're able to see if we need anything else. So I'm just going to, okay, I'm also going to Shift G to bring up this option. I'm going to select seams. Okay, I'm just going to select this, Shift G, seams, and then Control Shift M to mirror it over to the other side. And then I'm just going to, I'm just going to mark seams on all of this, and I'm just going to merge everything by distance just in case I extruded something by accident. Okay, so something like this, and then I'm going to unwrap everything, and yeah, everything is looking nice on the UV unwrap. I'm just going to move this out of the way, and for this character I'm not going to bother using a UDIM. For this character I'm just going to use one UV tile for this character, and then I'm going to select the head. I'm going to rotate this on the x-axis by 90, and I'm going to move this here and actually move it to the middle of the UV grid by just coming. So you can press N to bring up the UV vertex panel, these options here, and then you can just type in 0.5 and it's going to move it directly to the middle. And GY, I'm going to bring this up here, scale it up a bit, and I'll just place this here. So I'm just going to roughly arrange these UVs. If you want to see how I properly arrange UVs, you definitely watch the video on my YouTube channel. I explain UVs in depth there. And also on this head unwrap, I'm going to also unwrap with minimum stretch instead. So minimum stretch is going to reduce the stretching. I'm just going to rotate that again. I'll move it to the middle, 0.5, and GY, I'm going to move this up and I'm going to scale it down, and I'll move this somewhere around here, and I'm just going to bring in the body also. I'll scale this down and I'll bring this right here. I'm going to select these ones S, and then I'll bring this here, and I'll also bring this here. And then for also the tools, on the tools I also like to unwrap minimum stretch, unwrap with minimum stretching, so that the tools can have, the UV distribution on the tools can be much nicer. So this is what it looks like with minimum stretching. Without minimum stretching, this is what it looks like, and so that's going to cause a lot of stretching. So this is what it looks like with minimum stretch. I'm just going to scale it down. It doesn't need to be this big. And for this character also, so if it's your first time joining the live, probably don't know that this is the character I'm trying to create. So this one right here, so the feet of this character is going to be inside the water, so it's not going to be seen as much. So we can make the UVs of it really small. So I'm just going to select this and I'm going to scale it down, something like this. And then I believe these are the hands. Let me just make sure. I'm going to turn off live syncing here, and if I select this, yeah, these are the hands. And then we can move this over to this side, and I'm just going to move it over here, scale it down a bit, move it over here, scale it down a bit. And this is the under of the feet, and I'm going to unwrap with minimum stretching too. Then I'm going to scale this down and move one over to this side. So I'm not being precise with these UVs, so I'm just placing them, arranging them nicely, but I'm not being precise with them for this particular project. Okay, and then let me select all of the hands, and you can select them with Ctrl L. It's going to select just the seam, and I'm going to unwrap this, unwrap with angle based here, and then I'm just going to scale all of this down and I'll move them here. Okay, also the same thing for the other side, Ctrl L, and then you unwrap angle based. I'm going to scale this down and I'll bring it somewhere around here. Then for okay, actually I'll move these up. I'll rotate it, I'll just move this up here because I want the legs to be here. So I'll move this up. I'll have to scale down the head. And then I'm going to bring in the legs. So this is the right leg of the character. I'm just going to place this right here, and I'm also going to place this one right here. I'm going to make sure that it's not intersecting with any of these G, and I'm going to bring this down, and then I'm going to also unwrap the neck. Yes, I'll scale this down and I'll just bring this somewhere around here. I'll scale this down and bring this here. So this is not the main thing we have to do for today, and I'm taking a lot of time on it. So let me just rush quickly over the UVs. We still have to texture paint the character. So I'm just going to rush over the UVs a bit, and I'm going to place this right here. And what's remaining, so the back of the ear, I haven't unwrapped those, so we can just move these ones here. And also for the ear, the front of the ear, so that's this one and this one. I'm going to bring them here, and I'll bring this one right here. And then for the inside of the mouth and the chest, I'm just going to unwrap these. I'm going to scale them down a bit. I'll bring the inside of the mouth up here. It's going to be fine sitting up there. And then for the chest, I'm going to scale this down. I'll bring this here, this one right here. And then I'll just adjust the body. I'll rotate this like this, and then I'll bring this one right. Oh, selected the wrong thing. And then I'll just bring this one right here. Okay, so that looks nice. Now we can actually go on to texturing this character. I'm not going to bother texturing the clothes on the stream. And also, in case you were on the live stream, so I sculpted in folds last live stream. I sculpted in a lot of folds on the clothes on this side, but later on I decided I'll just sculpt a few of the wrinkles and of the folds just at the top. And then for these bottom parts, I'll allow because I'm still going to do cloth simulation on this cloth, so I'll just allow the cloth simulation to make all the folds for me instead of me sculpting them. So yeah, I'm going to use cloth simulation for the clothing folds, and I'm also not going to do the UVs for the clothes right now. I'm just going to focus on the character. And in my spare time, I also went ahead and did the hair. So the hair doesn't look good in the viewport, but if I go into the rendered mode, let's see. Yeah, so this is what the hair is looking like. I still have like a lot to do on the hair, so like I still need to do this part of the hair. So I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to use procedural shading and procedural geometry nodes, or if I'm just going to do it manually with hands. So yeah, I'm going to figure that out. Once I figure it out, I'm going to do it for this character, but that'll take too long to figure out on stream. So I'm just going to texture the character for now. Jmond body UVs overlapping. Oh, thank you for pointing that out. Thank you. And let me go into edit mode, and then I can bring this down. Okay, and now you can actually go ahead and start texturing this character. I'm going to split up my viewport here, and then I'm going to change this to the shader editor. And on this character, I'm going to add in a new material, and I'm going to call this skin. And then I'm going to move this right here. And now we need an image textures. The eyes, Hyper is asking, are the eyes separate mesh from the head? Yes, the eyes are their own separate geometry, the eyes and the eye highlights. So these are not the final eyes. I'm still going to I'll probably bring in eye assets that I always use. So this was just for the sculpting, but yes, is a separate object from the body. Okay, and I'm going to go into texture painting mode, and everything is purple or pink. So if you ever see your textures or anything in Blender purple or pink, it just means that there's no texture or there's missing texture. So I'm going to add in a new texture slot, and I'm going to add in the base color, and I already have the colors here. I'll just copy this, and then I'm going to add in a base color. I'll paste in that color here, and then I'm going to use a 3K map. So 3072 by 3072, and I'm going to press add. Okay, so now that new texture has been added, and now we can start painting in the skin. I'm going to bring up my reference here. This is the reference I'm going to be using for the skin. I particularly I like the shape of the lips, sorry, the colors on the lips and around the eyes. So I'll just go ahead and do that. I have the colors selected already, and I'm using the default brush, the paint hard brush. I'm going to turn on pressure sensitivity, and I'm going to switch the colors with X, and then I'll probably make this red a little bit, and then just so that I don't in case I come up here to change these colors, I'm just going to save these colors. So Blender has a color palette down here where you can add in a new color palette, and I'm going to call this skin, and then I'm going to add in this color. So I've saved the color, so even if I close Blender or I change this color is always going to be here in the color palette. I'll also save the skin color, and I'll just move this up. Right, so I want to use the darker color right now. I'll reduce my strength, take this to about 0.5, and then I'm just going to start going over the eyelids. So normally I use texture painting. I don't use texture painting. If you watched my last video, I used vertex paints for most things, but for this character I want to try using texture painting. So let's see how that goes. I'm going to use texture painting. I'm going to just paint it a little bit, and then we'll use procedural shading to enhance the skin. Okay, and then I'm just going to smooth this out. So I'm holding down Shift, and I'm just going to blur this out. So the blur brush doesn't work really nicely inside of texture painting, and that's why I don't like to use it that much. But I'm just going to switch to my default skin color with a smaller strength. I'll just paint over that side so I can just blend in well with the skin. And I'm also painting over here, and then I'll hold down Shift, and then I'm going to smooth this out. See, something like that is a good start. And then I'm going to choose a darker red color, something like this. and I'm just going to paint all over the lips like this. So I'm being rough about it right now. I'll just go in and paint over the lips. Something like that. And then I'll take the color of the skin and then I'll paint over where I don't want that color to be. And then you can also smooth this out, just holding down shift to blur and to smooth it out. And then for the bottom of the lips is a bit brighter than what we currently have. I'll add this to my color swatch, and then I'm just going to bring this up, and then I'll change the color to more of like a pinkish color, something like this, and I'll reduce the strength, and then I'll just paint over this bottom lip. And just so that I don't paint on the top lip, I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm going to select these faces here, Ctrl plus to select, and Ctrl I. I'm going to press Ctrl I to invert the selection. I'll go back into texture painting, and then you can turn on these marks here. So now we have maxed out this part, so we are not going to paint over that area no matter how much you paint on it. So I'm just going to paint on this, and I'll make this a bit brighter, and I'll just paint over the lips, and then I'm going to smooth this out while holding down shift. And then for the inside of the mouth, which is here, I'm just going to use this color here, and I'll completely paint it in. So I'll make sure I'm on the image editor, and I'll change this to paint, and then you can just completely paint in that color right here. Okay, so something like this, and I'm going to select this color again, and then I'm just going to paint in this side of the lips. So the masking is still on, I'm going to turn that off. Then I'm going to paint in the sides of the lip. I'm going to use a high strength, and then I'm just going to paint in the lips like this, and then I'm going to smooth that out. Something like that, and then I'm also going to smooth here out, and then we can take the default skin color, and then we can paint out those areas where we don't need the color. So I'm just going to turn on wireframe so that I can see where exactly I'm painting, and I'm going to paint here out. And I'm also going to paint out this top part. Okay, so something like that. I'm going to add some redness to the cheeks, and I'm going to use this color here. I'll reduce the strength a lot, and I'll use a big brush size, and then I'm just going to go over the side of the face. Okay, that is too pinkish. I'm going to find a reddish tone rather. So I'll just Ctrl Z a bit, and I'm going to go down to the reds, also bring this color down a bit, and then I'm going to paint in the red again, and I'll see how that looks. Okay, that's going to look fine. We'll still come back and smooth out the colors. Something like this. I'll also paint some reds on the nose. And then I'll go back to the default skin color, and I'll just go over these colors a bit, especially on the sides, so that we can blur them into the skin. Okay, something like this, and then I'm just going to blur this out. And I'm also going to blur out the side on the nose. For the inside of the nose. So I'm being really rough about the texture painting right now, but I'm still going to go back and clean up the shapes, these colors, a little bit later. But for right now, I just want to like block in the main colors on the face, and then I'll go in and clean up those colors. I'll also add in a bit of red to the ears, so I'm going to select the ear here, and I'm also going to select the other side, and then I'll go back into texture paint. I'll turn on my marks, the paint marks this time, and then I'm just going to paint reds on the ear. So I selected that part of the ear so that I don't have to paint on this other back of the ear, on this back of the head. And then I'll just make sure to select this one, also make sure this side is selected too. And then okay, I'll just Ctrl Z a little bit to before I painted in the textures on the ear, not because the back side of the ear was not selected. Okay, so I'm going to select the back side and Alt H, and now we can go into texture painting, and then we can paint in on the ears. So that's too much on the ears. I'm just going to hold down Shift and blur this out. And then I'm going to select the default skin color, and then I'll just smooth out the transitions on the colors. Then we can turn off this max now, and then we can blur this out. See, it's still too much. I'm just going to go over it a bit. Okay, so something like this. Then I'm going to paint in where the hair is. So I'm just going to make it a darker color. I'm going to choose the normal skin color here. I'll make it much darker, and then I'm just going to paint this in. And I'm just being very rough about the painting right now. And I'm just going to paint in the back of the head, or I guess the hair scalp, where the hair would be. something like this, and then we need to blur this out a lot. Something like this, and the cheeks are a bit too red, so I'll just tone that down a lot. I'll select the default skin color with a low strength, so I'll just go by it like so. I'll go by it again over this side. Okay, so I've only worked on the face right now. I'm still going to do the body in my own spare time, but let's do some procedural shading on the skin before I continue, just so that this can look nicer. I'll go into render preview to actually see how that's looking, and yeah, I think that's looking actually really nice. Okay, let me do, and yeah, I also make sure to save this map, Alt S, and I'm going to create a new folder for this textures, and I'm going to name it yeah, skin base color, and then I'm going to save. And let's see. Blender just froze. Hopefully Blender doesn't crash right now. I'm going to have to close Blender and open it up again. I'm just going to close Blender and open it up again. I don't know why Blender closed there, so let me see. I'm going to end that. Okay, and I'm going to open Blender up again, and okay, so we lost progress there, but we should be able to load up, I believe, the textures saved. Hopefully the textures saved, and so I'm going to create the new material. We lost a lot of progress there. All the shading that we just did has been lost because Blender decided to crash. So I'm just going to add in the image texture back, and hopefully it saved it. Let me open this up. Okay, so we still have the image texture. So okay, so we didn't lose much because we saved the image texture. So let me try again to go into material preview. Okay, that looks nice. So I don't know why Blender froze on me there. Thankfully we're able to save the image texture in time. Okay, there's a question. How is the lighting setup? Okay, this is the default lighting setup. Okay, I changed the HDRI to this one. By default is on this one, but I just changed the HDRI to this one. Okay, and let's do some procedural shading. I'm going to hide the hair, and I'm going to go into the rendered mode. I'm using cycles, and then let's see what we can do with this. I'm going to bring this out here, and then I'm going to add in a layer width node. I'm going to plug the Fresnel into a color ramp. So I showed this exact same technique, what I'm doing right now. I showed it in my previous video, the latest video I just released on Sunday. So this is the technique that I showed, and then I'm just going to flip this around. So the Fresnel, the layer width, just gives, like, if you take a look at this black stuff around the character, it looks really nice, but we don't want it to be this much. So I'm just going to tone it down a little bit, somewhere around here. And you can also change the interpolation. I'll change this to ease or to be spline. Yes, something like this. And now we can mix this skin color, color map, with this Fresnel setup. So I'm just going to mix them, and if you change this to soft light, it should start to look good. I'm going to switch this, yes. And so this is what we had by default, and then this is what we have with the Fresnel setup. So this is default, this is the Fresnel setup, and it just tends to make the character look really nice. You can also take this up to something you like, and then I'm going to plug that into the base color, and then yeah, so that just looks nice. I'll also turn on subsurface scattering for this character. So I'll bring that up. I'll change this to random walk skin, and if you ever change the subsurface to skin and you start to see this like whitish stuff on the character, you just need to adjust the scale on the subsurface. So I'll take this to 0.001, and yeah, that looks nicer. Probably take it down even more, 0.8. Okay, and you can take this all the way up. Okay, so that's starting to look nice. Okay, I'm just going to add some procedural shading on this. Okay, we're going to add in a bit of procedural shading to the skin. We just add some freckles to the skin, or some color variation. I'm going to add in a noise texture, and then I'm going to Ctrl T to add in the texture coordinates and the mapping, and I'm going to plug this into the UV, and then we can bring up the scale by lots. Just take this up, and now we can use this noise texture to drive in some color variation on the sculpt. So I'm just going to add a color ramp before this, and if I bring in the color ramp, something like this, we definitely still need to take this up, and we can pick up the detail just a bit, and then we're just going to crunch in the color ramp, and then I'll take this up even more, and now we can mix that in with the skin base color. I'll take this back here, and we can mix this in. It's not what we want. I'll change this to the factor, and I'll bring this above, and yeah, something like this is what we want. Not exactly this, but I'm just going to crunch this in, and then I'm going to take the scale even way higher. So this just help add a bit of color variation to the skin, just some spots on the skin. And then for this color here, I'm going to add in a hue saturation node. This one, I'm going to plug this into the color, and then I'll plug this into the B socket. So nothing, it will go back to the default. But if we reduce the value of this color of this hue saturation node, And let's also take up the saturation and bring it, yes, let's take it up. So then we start to see those color variation on the skin. Okay, so something like this. I'm going to see how it looks on the base color. So I'm going to plug this one into here instead. And then let's see how this looks on the base color. Okay, so we decide to add some spots on the character. So that looks nice. And actually, the time for my shading is up. So we weren't able to do much procedural shading, but we were able to texture the character. And so in my spare time, I will go in and add some procedural shading for the lips. I'll max out the lips so that these spots are not on the lips. And let me turn on the hair, see how everything looks. And then I'll also figure out how to do the hair. So these are annotation lines right now, they are not actual geometry. Let me go into the render mode to see how this looks. Okay, and yeah, it looks really good in cycles. Let me change the lighting setup to the default. Let's check another one. Take this one. And okay, yeah, it looks nice. I'll play around with the texturing a bit. Okay, so you guys have any question before I leave? And yeah, I'm going to any questions. If no questions, I'm going to head off. Okay, so there's a bit of delay in YouTube, like there's a bit of delay between the reply and my voice, so I'm just going to wait. If you guys have any questions, thank you guys for joining the live stream, and I'll see you guys in another live stream if there are no other questions. Okay, all right, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next week Wednesday with another live stream, and by next week Wednesday I should be finishing off the character. Should be like in the environment stage. So I'll see you guys then. You guys should have a nice day. Bye.